Good evening. I'm the distant end, back by unpopular demand. We are again in my office, as we discussed 2 videos ago. An office is a place where I have coffee. So, I wasn't going to record. I'll get into that in a second. This next month is going to be insane, and I will be surprised if I get to record anything. I'm flying to Tennessee next week, going another trip a week after. I have like 2 weddings in August, so that I'm attending, if I needed to clarify. And yeah, my schedule is insane. Not to mention work, which thank God, literally, that I'm able to do so and do overtime and things like that. And go to the gym again. And go to physical therapy once a week. And yeah, I've got a lot going on, but a lot to be grateful for, which is a good reminder for me. I'll get into 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 in my material. But I'm not really talking about stuff that I want to talk about on this channel yet. I apologize for the mic here. I could not find a good place on my shirt, so I stuck it on my necklace. We'll see if it stays on. I don't want it too close. But yeah, this is not the stuff I want to talk about. You know, I want to dig into like Josephus Flavius, the Antiquities of the Jews, like the story about Alexander the Great having a dream while he's in, I believe it's Amphipolis, where he was actually having this dream, which is the capital city of Macedon. And basically this dream where he enters the gates of Jerusalem and meets the high priest, which is a factor that leads to his conquering of Persia, which fulfills prophecy in, I believe, Daniel chapter 8, if not chapter 7, as well as Zechariah. So I want to talk about that stuff. I want to talk about the Sibylline Oracles, which are collections of Jewish and Christian writings that are written by pagans with like a pagan framework. Not that it's divinely inspired or anything. I think it's interesting context, or 1st and 2nd Maccabees, or Jubilees, Jasher, that kind of stuff. I want to make every denomination upset with me. I want to, the Catholics, which is low-hanging fruit, like saying Genesis chapter 3 and Revelation chapter 12 are not about Mary being sinless, and Protestants talk about Mary, or how tongues are not gibberish and that tongues are something that everyone can understand. So, or talking about how Mark chapter 7 verse 14 and Acts chapter 10 are not about food, which is a pretty controversial one. Oh, that's Jewish stuff. No, it's not. No, it's not. That is stuff that Abraham did all the way backwards. Abraham was a Christian, not a Jew. The Jews didn't exist yet. Oh, you're just a Pharisee. That's the only fair I see. I'm a poet, and I didn't know it. At least 3 people heard that pun and audibly groaned. I have more where that came from. But that's the stuff I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about feelings. I don't want to talk about the crap I have been talking about. I do it because I'm being obedient, which might be hard to believe for a few people. And it's not just about, me. It's not. I have experiences on both sides of things that apparently are valuable, and I want to be a servant to the best of my broken ability. None of this stuff is gossip at all. It's not like, it's certainly not the kind where, you hear a prayer request and, somebody else and somebody, wow, Janine said this and I pray for her mortal soul and all. No, this is not that. Why? Because whatever's been done to me, I have almost certainly done to somebody else. I think Romans chapter 12, verse 17, 18, 19 comes to mind. To paraphrase, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, right? I will repay. So I feel like I've, in some ways, had that dealt out a little bit. And not that I didn't deserve it. Just funny how God works. So no, this isn't gossip. This isn't condemnation. I have no place issuing any condemnation. And conviction, to the extent that there is any, is from the Holy Spirit. And if you have conviction from the things I say, just know that I'm sitting next to you in the pile of rocks that is being thrown at us. Because I've done it too, okay? This isn't gossip. I'm not talking about a certain somebody or certain someone, because I've done the freaking things, okay? Like Paul, and the only thing Paul and I have in common is that we are the greatest of all sinners. So, yeah. Although, someone does owe me some banana bread that is stuffed with cookie dough. Now that is not gossip, that is a call out. There is a difference. But, 50 years from now, in 2076, we'll have a jubilee about it. And you don't have to worry about it anymore. Oh, that's Pharisee stuff again. Shut up. Here's what I'm here to talk about today, which is, how long, Samuel? And I'm going to get into that. And I will also get into why I didn't want to make this video. Sort of, a little bit. Let me flip open to my thingy here. So, if you have your word, your Bible, I invite you to open to 1 Samuel chapter 16. And I'm going to read it. And then I'm going to explain a little bit. So, to give you some context, Saul is the king of Israel. Samuel's anointed. Now, he's not truly Samuel's, it's God's anointed, but Samuel put the work in, put the effort in, and Samuel certainly had a stake in the game. He had an attachment, and it grieved Samuel to see Saul do what he did, displease God the way he did. So, verse 1, and Yahweh said to Shemuel, Samuel, how long are you going to mourn for Saul, seeing I have rejected him from reigning over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I am sending you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have seen among his sons a sovereign for myself. And Samuel said, how would I go when Saul hears that he shall kill me? And Yahweh said, take a heifer with you, and say, I have come to slaughter to Yahweh. And you shall invite Jesse to the slaughtering, and let me show you what to do. And you shall anoint for me the one I say to you. Am I going to verse 7? Yeah. And Samuel did what God said, and went to Bethlehem. And the elders of the town trembled at his coming, and said, do you come in peace? And he said, in peace. I have come to slaughter to God. Set yourselves apart, and you shall come with me to the slaughtering. And he set Jesse and his sons apart, and invited them to the slaughtering. And it came to be, when they came, that he saw Eliab, and thought, the anointed of God is indeed before him. But God said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or at the height of his stature, because I refused him. For not as man sees, for man looks at the eyes, but Yahweh looks at the heart. And I'm switching back and forth between like the Hebrew/Aramaic and King's English pronunciations. 1, because I want to. 2, because it gives additional context. 3, because I want to. So, suck it up. Plain. No, it is not the meteor that I deserve coming for me. I did not want to do this video for the past 2 weeks, roughly since the Sunday before, like that 4th of July weekend, I've just been going through it again. It just seems like just oppressiveness coming over me, over a variety of different things, one in particular. And this question came to mind when I saw it somewhere, like a brief clip about 1 Samuel, like how long Samuel. And it struck me. And so I wrote it down. And I have like 3 pages of notes that I just rewrote in the past 30 minutes. And I'll get to that in a second. I was dead set on filming today, and just all day, again, coming down on me, and just grief and pain and all that. And I got home and just was exhausted and went to lie down and just closed my eyes for a while. And I started scrolling on my phone, just looking through notes, and I got a phone call. Up to this point, I was justifying every reason why I wasn't going to do a video. And I get a call from Verizon support, which never happens because typically you're the one trying to reach Verizon and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and then going on the app, and the app crashes, and waiting some more. So Verizon support, I'm thinking, okay, scam caller, spoofed Verizon support's number. And a man on the other end picks up and he goes, "Hi, my name is Isaiah, and I'm calling from blah 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 blah." And I'm like, I just want to see how your services are and make sure you see if you need anything. And it's kind of groggy and, let's say, less than pleasant tone. No, I'm okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, thank you. Have a good evening. Click. And then it hits me, Isaiah. And I'm thinking initially Isaiah 29:11, because in my head I mixed Jeremiah 29:11 and Isaiah 29:11. I'm thinking, nope, that's not it. And Isaiah was previously in my notes for this, Isaiah chapter 61, but not what I was thinking immediately. Isaiah 53. So I go to Isaiah 53, read it, and I'll read it here in a second, and say, okay, yes sir, on it. Sat up. Any feeling of just fatigue and everything I had went away instantly. So I got to writing this. So, delayed obedience is still disobedience. Ask Jonah. So, here I am. We're going to flip to Isaiah 53 next. 53. Okay. Who has believed our report, and to whom was the arm of Yahweh revealed? For he grew up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of dry ground. He has no form or splendor that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should desire him. Despised and rejected by men, a man of pains and knowing sickness, and as one from whom the face is hidden, being despised, and we did not consider him. Truly he has borne our sicknesses and carried our pains, yet we reckoned him smitten, stricken by Elohim, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our crookednesses. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we were healed. We all, like sheep, went astray. Each one of us has turned to his own way, and God has laid on him the crookedness of us all. Pause. We think of sheep, like we think it's cute that we are compared to sheep. Sheep are effing retarded. Yeah, they are like the only animal in the animal kingdom, if you will, that basically cannot fend for itself. It has no mechanism of self-defense or even an instinct to hide. It has to be pulled out of holes in the ground all the time. So if you ever see what a shepherd does or just interact with sheep, yeah, you know why? Because we're kind of retarded. So Ooh, he said effing and retarded. Please, spare me. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, but he did not open his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, but he did not open his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment. And as for his generation, who considered that he should be cut off from the land of the living? For the transgression of my people he was stricken. And he was appointed a burial site with the wrong, and with the rich at his death, because he had done no violence, nor was deceit in his mouth. But God was pleased to crush him. He laid sickness on him, that when he made himself an offering for guilt, he would see a seed. He would prolong his days, and the pleasure of God, Yahweh God, prosper in his hand. He would see the result of the suffering of his life and be satisfied. Through his knowledge, my righteous servant makes many righteous, and he bears their crookednesses. Therefore I give him a portion among the great, and he divides the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his being unto death. And he was counted with the transgressors, and he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. This is going to be a longer video, and I'm sorry, but that's what I'm doing. So, of course we're going to suffer, because Christ suffered. We will contend with other people, other believers even. So let's go to Romans chapter 5. We're going to be doing a lot of this, so be ready. Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 4. Yeah. And not only this, but we also exalt in pressures, knowing that pressure works endurance, and endurance a provenness, and a provenness expectation. I will let you know when I feel that. But I suppose I don't have to. It's not a requirement. Then James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. My brothers, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the proving of your belief works endurance. And let endurance have a perfect work, so that you be perfect and complete, lacking in naught. Working on it. Yes, sir. On it, boss. First Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 15 through 18. See that no one renders evil for evil to anyone, but always pursue what is good, both for yourselves and for all. Rejoice always. Pray without ceasing. In all circumstances give thanks, for this is the desire of Elohim and Messiah Yeshua for you. Yeah, working on that too. Doesn't say you have to feel like you have to. It says to do it. Yet again, your feelings are irrelevant. Something in there about the heart being wicked. I don't know. That's just Old Testament stuff. Yeah, whatever. Okay. So like I said, we're going to contend with other people and other believers. We have a roadmap to reconcile and forgive. I'm going to get into it a little bit. Forgiveness doesn't require two people. It requires you, some humility, and vulnerability, and God. Reconciliation and restoration, that's a whole other thing. But forgiveness it doesn't require the other person at all, actually. So, again, I will get into that. But let's flip to Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5, verses, we're going to start at verse 38. Shotgun. If you're wondering where I'm sitting in the middle of the new chicken coop, which has finally been able to be started. I'm thankful for people that love me to help and to get on me. I can't do any of this by myself yet. I can't even kneel down correctly yet, which makes I can kneel down just well enough to humble myself. Not that takes a lot of effort. So, Anyway, you heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. We will get to that chapter of Exodus in a moment. But I say to you, do not resist the wicked. But whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. And he who wishes to sue you and take away your inner garment, let him have your outer garment as well. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks of you, and from him who wishes to borrow from you, do not turn away. You heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those cursing you. Do good to those hating you, and pray for those insulting you and persecuting you, so that you become sons of your Father in the heavens. Because he makes his sun rise on the wicked and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. For if you love those loving you, what reward have you? Are the tax collectors not doing the same too? And if you greet your brothers only, what do you do more than others? Are the tax collectors not doing so too? Therefore be perfect, as your Father in heaven is perfect. Between video 1 and this one, there's a lot of overlap. And simply put, you can't just talk about one thing. That's part of why some of this stuff takes so long. So, yeah, that's just the reality of digging into any of this. So, Exodus chapter 21. Oh, the Old Testament stuff. Yeah, that. All right, we're going to start with verse 23. But if there is an injury, then you shall give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, lash for lash. So the idea behind this is not necessarily literal. First off, there's a court system. There's a system of justice through any of this. This wasn't just take your brother out of the street and stone him, okay? And the example used in the New Testament regarding the woman having an affair, that the religious people, the Pharisees, drag out into the street in front of Jesus and saying, according to the law of Moses, this is, she's supposed to be stoned. They did that. It was like entrapment. They did that knowing full well that that was going to happen. And it was expressly for the purpose of proving a point and not for actual justice. Those of you without sin cast the first stone, right? So that is the moral behind that. This is to express a desire to avoid unequal weights and measures as far as punishment, right? Like you steal, a piece of gold and your entire family needs wiped out for it. Unequal weights and measures versus equal weights and measures. That's where we're going with this. So that's the blueprint, part of the blueprint I'm talking about anyway. So as far as dealing with other people, you run into a thing where if you are confronted with something that you didn't do or accused of something, that's always tough. I have this desire to fight and fight and fight and fight and argue and fight and argue and just dig a hole even deeper, whether I'm right or not. And I'm going to get into more of that later in the video. But does that please God or does that please me? Am I not allowing God the opportunity to defend me and to make me right before making that other person right? So, like I said, we'll get into that and God will fight for you. Starting with Acts chapter 4, the New Testament. I told you we're going to be doing a lot of this. So, if you're tired already, I'm sorry. Not sorry. I'm going to read a bit. And as they were speaking to the people, the priests and the captain of the set-apart place and the Sadducees came upon them, being annoyed because they taught the people and announced the resurrection from the dead in Yeshua and Jesus. And they arrested them and put them in jail until the next day, for it was already evening. But many of those who had heard the word believed, and the number of the men became about 5,000. And it came to be on the next day that their elders and rulers and scribes assembled in Jerusalem, as well as Hanan, the high priest, and Caiaphas, and Johanan, and Alexander, and as many as were of high priestly descent. And having placed them in the middle, they asked, "By what power or in what name did you do this?" And Peter, filled with the set-apart Spirit, the Holy Spirit, said to them, "The rulers of the people and elders of Israel, if today we are called to account for a good deed towards a sick man by whom he has been healed, let it be known to all of you and to all the people of Israel that the name of Yeshua Messiah of Nazareth, Jesus Christ, whom you impaled, who God Elohim raised from the dead, by him this one stands before you healthy. This is the stone which was rejected by you builders, which has become the chief cornerstone. And there is no deliverance in anyone else, for there is no other name under the heaven given among men by which we need to be saved." And seeing the boldness of Peter and John, and perceiving that they were unlearned and ordinary men, they marveled, and they recognized that they had been with Yeshua, Jesus. And seeing the man who had been healed standing with them, they could not contradict it. But when they commanded them to go aside out of the council, they consulted one another, saying, "What shall we do to these men? For indeed, that an outstanding miracle has been done through them, is apparent to all those dwelling in Jerusalem. We are unable to deny it. But in order that it spreads no further among the people, let us strongly threaten them to speak no more to anyone in this name." And they called them and commanded them not to speak at all or to teach in the name of Jesus. But Peter and John, answering them, said, "Whether it is right in the sight of Elohim to listen to you more than to Elohim, you judge. For it is impossible for us not to speak of what we saw and heard." And having threatened them further, they released them, finding no way of punishing them because of the people, because they were all praising Elohim for what had been done. For the man was over 40 years old, on whom this miracle of healing had been done. And having been released, they went to their own people and reported all that the chief priests and elders said to them. So, first off, the religious leaders arguing what to do. And it wasn't just Peter and John throwing the name of God out, right, and justifying what they did just based on that. It was the actual will of God for that to happen. And I sincerely doubt that God wasn't moving on their behalf among those leaders in that assembly. So that's an example of God moving for you. They didn't stand there and say, "Oh, well, you guys are doing this and that," and try to make excuses. They simply and boldly stated the truth, right? And they didn't go on and try to justify themselves, like, "I was in Jesus' name long before you," and try to make themselves righteous. They showed their righteousness by belief and by action. So we're going to go all the way back to Genesis. Chapter 26. Okay. Talking about Isaac. And there was a scarcity of food in the land because of the first scarcity of food, which was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Abimelech, sovereign of the Philistines, in Gerar. And Yahweh appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Mitzrayim. Live in the land which I command you. Sojourn in this land, and I shall be with you and bless you. For I give all these lands to you and your seed, and I shall establish the oath which I swore to Abraham your father, and I shall increase your seed like the stars of the heavens, and I shall give all these lands to your seed, and in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice and guarded my charge, my commands, my laws, and my Torah." And Isaac dwelt in Gerar. I feel like we've seen this movie before. And when the men of the place asked about his wife, he said that she is my sister, for he was afraid to say, "She is my wife," thinking lest the men of this place should go kill me for Rivkah, because she is good looking. And it came to be when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, sovereign of the Philistines, looked through a window, and he watched and saw Isaac playing with Rebekah, his wife. So Abimelech called Isaac and said, "See, she is your wife. So how could you say she is my sister?" And Isaac said to him, "Because I said, lest I die on account of her." And Abimelech said, "What is this you have done to us? One of the people had almost lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt on us." And Abimelech commanded all his people, saying, "He who touches this man or his wife shall certainly be put to death." So, again, I feel like that's 2 videos ago. Actions and intentions. And Isaac sowed in that land, and reaped in the same year 100-fold, and Yahweh blessed him. And the man grew great, and went forward until he became very great. And he came to have possessions of flocks and possessions of herds, and a great body of servants, and the Philistines envied him. And the Philistines had stopped up all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father, and filled them with dirt. And Abimelech said to Isaac, "Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we." So Isaac went from there, and pitched his tent in the Wadi Gerar, however you pronounce that, and dwelt there. Isaac dug again the wells of water which they had dug in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them up after the death of Abraham. He called them up by the names which his father had called them. But when Isaac's servants dug in the wadi and found a well of running water there, the herdsmen of Gerar strove with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "The water is ours." And he called the name of the well Esek, because they strove with him. And they dug another well, and they strove over that one too. And he called its name Sitnah. And he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not strive over it. And he called its name Rehoboth, and said, "For now Yahweh has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land." And from there he went up to Beersheba. And Yahweh appeared to him the same night and said, "I am the Elohim of your father Abraham. Do not fear, for I am with you, and shall bless you and increase your seed, for my servant Abraham's sake." So he repeats his blessing to him twice, at least in this chapter. So, but important to note that the herdsmen chased Isaac and his, let's say, crew all around the desert. I don't doubt that he could have at least engaged with them militarily, and maybe the Lord would have been with him and secured a victory. But that's not what happened. And despite whether he could or couldn't fight them, the actions he chose clearly display a trust in God and his provision and his protection. So I'm going to read 23 through 25, which I already read 24. And there's a little bit of foreshadowing, and we'll get into that in a second. And he built a slaughter place there and called on the name of Yahweh. And he pitched his tent there, and the servants of Isaac dug a well there. And Abimelech came to him from Gerar with Ahuzeth, one of his friends, and Pichol, the commander of his army. And Isaac said to them, "Why have you come to me, seeing you have hated me and have sent me away from you?" But they said, "We have clearly seen that God is with you." And we said, "Let there be an oath between us, between you and us, and let us make a covenant with you, that you do no evil to us, as we have not touched you, and as we have done only good toward you, and have sent you away in peace. You are now blessed by God." See? And he made them a feast, and they ate and drank. And they rose early in the morning, and swore an oath with one another. And Isaac let them go, and they departed from him in peace. And on the same day it came to be that the servants of Isaac came and informed him about the well which they had dug, and said to him, "We have found water." So he called it Sheba. Therefore the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. And when Esau, the eldest son, was 40 years old, he took his wives Yehudith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. And they were a bitterness of spirit to Isaac and Rebekah. We're going to get into that, as I said. So, yeah, God clearly blessed Isaac running around the desert, even though, whether he fought or not, it's irrelevant, because that's not what happened. And it was a testimony to the Philistines in that area. So that he was blessed, that no matter where he went, he found water and provision. So 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 9. This one is so marked up with pen, it's unreal. going to start at verse 8. To sum up, let all of you be like-minded, sympathetic, loving as brothers, tender-hearted, humble-minded, not returning evil for evil or reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, blessing, knowing that you are called to this in order to inherit a blessing. Galatians chapter 5, verse 13. For you brothers have been called to freedom. For you brothers have been called to freedom, not only to use freedom as an occasion for the flesh, but through love to serve one another. We're going to do 14. For the entire Torah is completed in one word, in this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. 15. And if you bite and devour one another, beware lest you be consumed by one another. Okay, 16. And I say, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not accomplish the lust of the flesh. All right, I'm not going to read the rest of that. We are going to read the fruits of the Spirit, though, which is verse 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, trustworthiness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no Torah, no law. As I said, forgiveness requires you, a level of humility and trust in God and God. That is it. It does not require the person from whom you are seeking. There's a deer all the way down there. It's about 175 yards. Let's see how long it takes to notice me. At 36 minutes. Crap. Okay. So, again, the roadmap. Especially with believers. Not to say that you treat everybody differently, but you are to deal with each other certain ways. And this is somewhat separate. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love. Did I say love? I think I did. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. If you don't love yourself, how are you going to love your neighbor? I'm not saying love like, oh, I'm going to go to Vegas and blow a bunch of money, or I'm going to go to a bar, get hammered, and go home with the nearest person that will pretend to be interested in me for the next hour or 3. Love, as in having discipline, boundaries for yourself and for others. And, let's think of Micah 6, verse 8. And you, O man, what does the Lord require of you but to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your Elohim? That sounds like 3 ways to love yourself. So, we're going to go to 1 Samuel chapter 14. Verses 1 through 7. Ooh, I love this one. I'm the one that wrote it. I should know. And it came to be, let me back up a little bit. Restoration requires courage, vulnerability, and humility. And some of these things I'm about to say lead into that. And as much as you want to be restored with somebody, they have to have a similar desire and gifting to do so. If they don't, it's in God's hands. Whatever is going to happen, happens. So, anyway. And it came to be one day that Jonathan, son of Saul, said to the young man who bore his armor, come, and let us go over to the outpost of Philistines, which is on the other side. But he did not inform his father. And Saul remained at the outskirts of Geba under a pomegranate tree at Migron. And the people who were with him were about 600 men. And Ahiah, son of Ahitub, Ichabod's brother, son of Phinehas, son of Eli, the priest of Yahuwah in Shiloh, was wearing a shoulder garment. And the people did not know that Jonathan had gone. Between the passes by which Jonathan sought to go over to the outpost of the Philistines, there was an edge of a rock on one side and the edge of a rock on another side. And the name of one was Botsetz, and the name of the other Senech. The one edge was on the north opposite Michmash, and the other on the south opposite Geba. Opposite. And Jonathan said to the young man who bore his armor, come, and let us go over to the outpost of these uncircumcised. For reference, that is an acknowledgement. If you were circumcised, that's part of the covenant with God for the people of Israel. Who is Israel? One who strives with Elohim, walks with Elohim, and overcomes with Elohim. Whole other thing. Anyway, if so, Yahweh does work for us, for there is no hindrance for God to save by many or by few. And this is another cool part. And his armor bearer said to him, do all that is in your heart. Incline yourself. See, I am with you according to your heart. So, number one, Jonathan, well-intentioned, looks at the Philistine camp. Yeah, God's going to be with us, I think. So, yeah, let's go. And the armor bearer going, yeah, bro, I'm with you. I love you. I trust you. That is male bonding, all right? And none of this gay Patroclus and Achilles type stuff that is all over the Emily Wilson and her consequences have been a disaster for classical antiquity. Anyway, whole other thing. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 16. And no, I'm not going to watch the new Odyssey movie, which is fake and gay. You said gay? Shut up. Chapter 16, verse 9. A man's heart plans his way, but Yahweh establishes his steps. We're going to go to Joel, chapter 2. Where is Joel? There's Joel. Just thinking of Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton. It's okay, I'm going to do a dive head first off of the nearest tallest object. That wasn't very edifying. I'm sorry. Joel, chapter 2, verse 25. And I shall repay you the years that the swarming locust has eaten, the crawling locust and the consuming locust, and the gnawing locust, my great army, which I sent among you. Then you shall eat and be satisfied, and shall praise the name of Yahweh your Elohim, who has done with you so wondrously, and my people shall never be put to shame. Shall never be put to shame. Am I out of coffee? Yes. Okay. Colossians chapter 3. I told you we're doing a lot of flipping today. Chapter 3, verse 12. Therefore, as chosen ones of God, set apart, or holy, and beloved, put on compassion, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, patience, bearing with one another, and forgiving each other if anyone has a complaint against another. Indeed, as Messiah forgave you, so also should you. All of these are a roadmap, again, to restoration. And you can try however many times you want. If that other person is not interested, that's what it is. Should I say this? Yeah, screw it. Don't send a text. Be original. Send a letter. Okay. That is said entirely out of love, by the way. Not out of bitterness. 1 Samuel chapter 15. It's also, again, not gossip. That is a acknowledgement. And not at all a bad thing. Okay, chapter 15. Verses 23 through 25. For rebellion is as the sin of divination, and stubbornness is as wickedness and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of Yahweh, he also does reject you as sovereign. And Shaul said to Shemuel, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the mouth of Yahweh in your words, because I feared the people and listened to their voice. Now please, pardon my sin and return with me, and let me bow myself to Yahweh. Where was I at? Oh, I'm reading 35, not 25. But Samuel said to Saul, I do not return with you, for you have rejected the word of God, and God does reject you from being sovereign over Israel. And as Samuel turned around to go away, Saul took the hold of the corner of his robe, and it tore. And Samuel said to him, God has torn the reign of Israel from you today. and has given it to a neighbor of yours, better than you. Moreover, the eminence of Israel does not lie or relent, for he is not a man that he should relent. Then he said, I have sinned, but esteem me now, please, before the elders of my people and before Israel, and return with me, and I shall bow myself to Yahweh your Elohim. And Samuel turned back after Shaul, and Shaul bowed himself to God. And Samuel said, bring Agag, sovereign of the Amalekites, here to me. So Agag came to him delightedly, and Agag said, truly the bitterness of death has turned aside. And Samuel said, as your sword bereaved women, let your mother be bereaved among women too. Samuel then hewed Agag to pieces before Yahweh in Gilgal. And Samuel went to Ramah, while Shaul went up to his house at Geba of Shaul. And Samuel did not see Saul again until the day of his death, for Samuel mourned for Saul. And God was grieved that he had made Saul to reign over Israel. So, I didn't write this down, and I didn't have this thought until I read it out loud. Firstly, God was grieved. We see this again previously in Genesis chapter 6, verse 6, where God regretted making man after seeing the abominations that he started to commit. So, Samuel and God are both grieving somewhat differently over different things. Samuel was distraught that something that he put effort and time into is this going to come to nothing. And, whether Saul certainly had his choices. It's not his, you can't say that it wasn't God's will or God's will. God knows what's going to happen, right? This isn't the Calvinists, versus Armenian thing, right? That's a whole other thing I could make fun of, but anyway. Whether or not it's God's will is irrelevant. Asterisk. Until it is. And the effect is the same. They would have been grieving one way or the other later down the line. And God knows what was going to happen. He was still sad. He was still upset that it happened. Just like he was still upset that that his son was crucified. So, yeah. Anyway, where was I going with that? Walking away is like death. It is like death in a manner of speaking. It's Samuel turning his back on Saul, walking away from that is another boundary actually. But it's like, look, man, I can't do this. I can't deal with this. You've messed with God too much, and he's upset, and he's taking this away from you. I'm sorry, but this is what it is, right? So, as I said, whether God made it happen or not, it still sucks. So, I'm going to get into that a little bit. Matthew chapter 5, verses 3 through 4. Blessed are the poor in spirit, because theirs is the reign of the heavens. Blessed are those who mourn, because they shall be comforted. Mourning is a couple of different things. Sometimes you mourn because you know you sinned. Like if you read Psalm chapter 51, for example, David lamenting and mourning what he did, how he sinned against God. And yes, when he says, I sinned only against you, meanwhile, I think the joke is that Uriah is up there in heaven going, sinned against him only, right? But loving your neighbor as yourself and loving the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind are like this. So, he was correct in what he said, objectively speaking. Anyway, acknowledgement of things we've done, things we didn't do, things that never happened the way they were supposed to. It's life, okay? We're going to 2 Corinthians chapter 1. chapter 2, starting at verse 1. And I decided this within myself, not to come to you again in sadness. For if I make you sad, then who is he who makes me glad but by the one who is made sad by me? And I wrote to you as I did, so that having come, I might not have sadness over those whom I should have joy, trusting in you, all that my joy is that of you all. For out of much pressure and distress of heart I wrote to you with many tears, not that you should be sad, but that you might know the love which I so richly have for you. But if anyone has caused sadness, he has not made me sad, but in some degree you all, not to be too harsh. For such a one, this punishment by the many is sufficient. So that, on the contrary, you should rather forgive and comfort, lest somehow such a one be swallowed up with too much sadness. So I appeal to you to confirm your love to him. Besides, I wrote for this purpose also, that I might know the proof of you, if you are obedient in all matters. And whom you forgive any matter, I do also. For indeed, if I have forgiven any matter, I have forgiven that one for your sakes in the sight of Messiah. So, grief hits us when people, things, jobs leave our life, whether through death, fired, just leaving in general, or something breaks that you have a lot of attachment to, like a vehicle. Funnily enough, I'm very well versed in a lot of those things. And as much as it sucks, and as much as you question why, God allows brokenness to produce repentance. And what is repentance? To turn around. But he also, as previously stated in the first couple of verses, allows it to produce endurance, right? And in a different verse, which I haven't quoted, to paraphrase Paul, to be made perfect in weakness. Actually, the verse about that thorn that he keeps praying to be rid of, right? And very likely his eyesight, but how that thorn keeps him reliant on God. So that is why we experience brokenness. And it manifests itself in ways like brokenhearted is not a metaphor. It is very, very physical. I'm sure everyone has been brokenhearted, where you feel your actual heart is trying to just rip itself in pieces. Whether it's something you did yourself, something you caused, or something out of your control, irrelevant. So that's an actual manifestation of grief, right? So Psalms chapter 23, verse 4. Talk about comfort. When I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Psalm 126, verse 5. I cannot figure out how to make my leg comfortable with this new brace. Hot people and knee injuries are like a moth to flame. It's like gaslighting myself. 126 verse 5. Those sowing in tears shall reap with songs of joy. Those sowing in tears shall reap with songs of joy. I'm going to read verse 6. He who goes on and weeps, bearing seed for sowing, shall indeed come in with rejoicing, bearing his sheaves. Isaiah chapter 61. Verse 5. And strangers shall stand and feed your flocks, and the sons of the foreigner be your plowmen and your vine dressers. Again, this is about comfort, right? So I think a lot of people have heard the saying, shared joy is double joy, shared sorrow is half sorrow, if I could talk. Acts chapter 9, verse 31. This was not created with AI. This is an anti-AI message. 9, verse 31. You know how I know it wasn't? Because it would be a little more, probably better organized. AI is demonic. Then indeed, the assemblies all throughout Judah and Galilee and Samaria had peace and were built up, and walking in the fear of Yahuwah and the encouragement of the set-apart Spirit, the Holy Spirit, they were being increased. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 31. Sorry, verse 13. Dyslexia? Question mark. Now, brothers, we do not wish you to be ignorant concerning those who have fallen asleep, lest you be sad as others who have no expectation. For we believe that Yeshua died and rose again, so that also Elohim shall bring with him those who sleep in Yeshua, sleep in Jesus, rest in Jesus. For this we say to you by the word of the Master, that we, the living who are left over at the coming of the Master, shall in no way go before those who are asleep, because the Master himself shall come down from heaven with a shout, with the voice of a chief messenger, and with the trumpet of messenger, and with the trumpet of Elohim, and the dead in Messiah shall rise first. Then we, the living, who are left over, shall be caught away together with them in the clouds to meet the Master in the air. And so we shall always be with the Master. So then encourage one another with these words. Right. I was just about to go off on a tangent. Another thing is rapture theology. Not a fan of that. Not going to go into that. Anyway, fear of God, not fear of man, fear of God, and comfort are like this. And we see that throughout. I just cherry picked, like, a thing that comes to mind is Jacob having his hip broken, right? That wrestling, that striving with God over what was about to happen with Esau, which I'm about to get to, is an example of that fear of the Lord bringing comfort to him. Yes, he got his hip broken. Irrelevant. Would you rather be right, or would you rather be righteous? I asked this question earlier, I think, if I remember correctly. Again, that's a hard question. You want to defend yourself. You have this fleshly desire to fight and claw and destroy. There have been times in my life where I felt that desire very deeply, and I wanted to justify myself. But would that please God, or would that make me happy and just start a snowball of stupidity that I could have avoided by being humble and vulnerable? So there's a time for that. I'm going to get to that in a second. Some of you know what I'm talking about. We're going to start with 1 Corinthians chapter 13. The love one. I'm in rare form, which is good. Verses 4 through 9. Love is patient, is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not boast, is not puffed up, does not behave indecently, does not seek its own, is not provoked, reckons not the evil, does not rejoice over the unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. It covers all, believes all, expects all, endures all. Love never fails, and whether there be prophecies, they shall be inactive, or tongues, they shall cease, or knowledge, it shall be inactive. So, for we know in part, and we prophesy in part. Tongues, not gibberish. Right. Ephesians chapter 4. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Am I going to read this whole thing? Yes, I'm going to read this whole thing. At 1 hour. I'm so sorry. I don't blame you if you don't watch the whole way through all at once. I'll try to put chapters, maybe. Probably not. I don't feel like it. I call upon you, therefore, I, the prisoner of the Master, to walk worthily of the calling with which you were called, with all humility and meekness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, being eager to guard the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace, one body and one Spirit, as you also were called in one expectation of your calling, one master, one belief, one immersion, one Elohim and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. But to each one of us favor was given according to the measure of the gift of the Messiah. That is why it says, when he went up on high, he led captivity captive and gave gifts to men. But what does he went up mean, except that he also first went down into the lower parts of the earth? He who went down is also the one who went far up above all the heavens to fill all. And he himself gave some as emissaries, and some as prophets, and some as evangelists, and some as shepherds and teachers, for the perfecting of the set apart ones, for the work of service to a building up of the body of the Messiah, until we all come to the unity of belief and of the knowledge of the Son of Elohim, to a perfect man, to the measure of the stature of the completeness of Messiah, so that we should no longer be children tossed and torn about by every wind of teaching, by trickery of men and cleverness, unto the craftiness of leading astray. Slow this down on YouTube. I'm reading as fast as possible. So if you need me to slow down, I'm not doing that. Just slow me down a little bit in the settings. But maintaining the truth and love, we grow up in all respects unto him, who is the head Messiah from the entire body, joined and knit together by what every joint supplies, according to the working by which each part does its share, causes growth of the body for the building up of itself in love. So this I say and witness in the Master, that you should no longer walk as the nations walk in futility of their mind, having been darkened in their understanding, having been estranged from the life of Elohim, because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the hardness of their heart, who, having become callous, have given themselves up to indecency, to work all uncleanness with greediness. But you have not so learned Messiah, if indeed you have heard him and were taught by him, all as truth is in Yeshua, that you put off, with regard to your former behavior, the old man, being corrupted according to the desires of deceit, and to be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and that you put on the renewed man, which was created according to Elohim in righteousness and set apartness of the truth. Therefore, having put off the false, speak truth, each one with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. Be wroth, but do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your rage, nor give place to the devil. Let him who stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands what is good, so that he has somewhat to share with those in need. Let no corrupt word come out of your mouth, but only such as is good for the use of building up, so as to impart what is pleasant to the hearers. And do not grieve the set-apart spirit of Elohim, by whom you are sealed for the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and displeasure and uproar and slander be put away from you, along with all evil, and be kind towards one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as Elohim also forgave you in Messiah. James chapter 4. Okay. An hour and 2. James chapter 4, verses 2 through 6. You desire and do not have. You murder and are jealous and are unable to obtain. You strive and fight and you do not possess, because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive, because you ask evilly in order to spend it on your pleasures. Adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with Elohim? Whoever therefore intends to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of Elohim. 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 1 through 5. Can I keep up with myself? That's the better question. Let a man regard us as, of course there's a train. Let a man regard us as servants of Messiah and trustees of the secrets of Elohim. For the rest, it is taught in trustees that those should be found trustworthy. But with me, it is a small matter, that I should be judged by you or by a man's court. But not even myself I judge, for I am not conscious of any matter against myself. Yet I am not declared right by this, but he who judges me is Yahweh. So do not judge any at all before the time, until the Master comes, who shall bring to light what is hidden in darkness, and reveal the thoughts of the hearts. And each one's praise shall come from Elohim. Okay. Right. Would you rather be right or righteous? Now, it may or may not please God for you to be restored to that job, that career, that school, that person, that relationship. You know, what you see online a lot is two people to find each other again, right? They never got lost. They know how to find each other, right? Let's be honest. But I think what we know about God is that he loves to restore what is good. He loves to restore people that are in complete vulnerability and humility. So let's start with Genesis chapter 50, all the way back. I feel like I just talked about Genesis chapter 50. It's because I did. And it's about his brothers who are afraid of potential payback against him, or against them for selling him into slavery. And they say, this is what you are to say. Sorry. I beg you, please, this is verse 17. I beg you, please forgive their transgression, the transgression of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. And now please forgive the transgression of the servants of the Elohim of your father. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. And his brothers also went and fell down before his face. And they said, see, we are your servants. And Joseph said to them, do not fear, for am I in place of Elohim? And you intended evil against me, but Elohim intended it for good, in order to do as it is this day, to keep a great many people alive. And now do not fear, I provide for you and your little ones. So he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. After both parties were changed, I believe in Genesis chapter 46, that's what Joseph is testing them. And he's afraid for Benjamin, who's now the youngest brother. And he wants to see if they're capable of doing that again. And Judah, the one who was most angry with him, who drove this decision to sell him into slavery while he's crying and terrified, steps forward and offers himself as a hostage. And I'm fairly certain that's the moment that Joseph knew. They've changed. There's a saying, I believe might be Heraclitus or Seneca. I think it's Heraclitus. No man walks through the same river twice, for he is neither the same man, nor is it the same river. So you have to be changed, and you have to let God change you. Probably both of you. I know I am, for the better in a lot of ways. I'm grateful for that. He's been kind to me. I'm going to start with Genesis chapter 32. I'm almost done. Promise. So Jacob is now fearing. Esau, his older brother, that he cheated out of his birthright, read on your own, is about to have an encounter with Jacob. And he is concerned. And he's also a changed man at this point. And he's about to change even further in starting at verse 28, or rather verse 24. But starting at verse 10, I do not deserve the least of all the love and commitment and all the truth which you, capital Y, have shown your servant. For I passed over this garden, with my staff, and now I have become two groups. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and shall strike me and the mother with the children. For you said, I shall certainly do good to you, and shall make your seed as the sand of the sea, which are too numerous to count. And he spent the night there, and took what came to his hand as a present for Esau his brother. And then later in this chapter, he wrestles with the man, capital M, a man, which was very likely Jesus, another Christophany, and is changed. His walk is different. Starting at verse 1 of chapter 33, and Jacob lifted his eyes and looked and saw Esau coming, and with him 400 men. And he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two female servants. And he put the female servants and their children in front, and Leah and her children behind, and Rachel and Joseph last. Favoritism, foreshadowing. And he himself passed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times. Number of spiritual completion, something like that, numerology, until he came near to his brother, and Esau ran to meet him. Where do we see this? The story of the prodigal son. And embraced him, and fell on his neck, and kissed him, and they wept. And he lifted his eyes, and saw the women and children, and said, Who are these with you? And he said, The children with whom Elohim has favored your servant. Then the female servants came near, they and their children, and bowed themselves. And Leah also came near with her children, and they bowed themselves. And Joseph and Rachel came near, and they bowed themselves. And Esau said, What do you mean by all this company which I met? And he said, To find favor in the eyes of my master. But Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Let what you have remain yours. And Jacob said, No, please, if I have now found favor in your eyes, then receive my present from my hand, because I have seen your face like seeing the face of Elohim, and you were pleased with me. Oh gosh, I'm going to tell something personal after this. Please take my blessing that is brought to you, because Elohim has favored me. And because I have all I need. And he urged him, and he took it. So, sorry, that reminded me of something. So, but first, Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Some people know where I'm going with this. Well, with the scripture part of it, not my story. For every matter there is an appointed time, even a time for every pursuit under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sue, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for battle and a time for peace. Chapter 4. Also, if two lie down together, they keep warm. But how does one keep warm by himself? Although one might be overpowered, two withstand him, and a threefold cord is not readily broken. What is a threefold cord? I believe it's a metaphor where two people, two or more, it could be two people or a friend group, which I'm blessed to have, where all of these strands are in effect chasing one strand around a coil. And that strand is God, Elohim. So two chasing one strand is the requirement of a relationship of any kind. And I think there's an important lesson in that, as far as everyone says first, but really should be always where God is. Psalm chapter 31. Verses 19 through 20. How great is your goodness, which you have laid up for those fearing you, which you have prepared for those taking refuge in you, in the sight of the sons of men. In the secrecy of your presence, you shall hide them from the plots of man. You shall shelter them. You shelter them in a booth from the strife of tongues. Okay. 19 and 20. It all leads back to fearing God. All roads lead to Rome. So, yeah. I'm blessed in a lot of ways, and there's echoes of this in what I just read, what I talked about. I have everything I need objectively, and I have a good bit of what I want. And I'm grateful for that. I don't deserve it. And he's been kind to me. Again, more than I deserve. You know, I've done a lot of evil in my life. Hurt a lot of people that also didn't deserve it. And I've been hurt by people when I didn't deserve it. Another? Really? Deserve is a funny word. gonna wait. Nineveh by Mun, great song. Christian music has grown on me within the past year. Growing up listening to 102.5 classic rock and K-Love, which is the same 5 songs on repeat all the time, turned me off from 2 different genres of music for a while. But yeah, Mun, Stephen Stanley, those are good Christian artists. Anyway, where was I going with that? I'm going back to Genesis 26 or 36, whichever one it was. I jog my brain. I know where I'm going with this. We have an accuser with a capital A in life. And back to the gossip thing. We have an accuser who runs to God about all the things we actually do. Like that we actually have done. And that's one thing. How many times do we accuse, or we accusers for other people, right? Of things that we haven't done or have done. And that's something to consider. I had the audacity one time to go to someone I hurt and have a problem with all these reels that they were sharing. And, whether they were right or wrong is irrelevant. I didn't, whatever my intentions were irrelevant. I was wrong to feel any type of way about that. So when I say that, like, there's no gossip here, I'm talking about stuff I've done. Like, I'm in the rock pile with everybody else. God is a judge. Actually, let me go to Romans. He's a righteous judge. Oh, like 2 Samuel, chapter 3, verses 16. A righteous judge, right? Anyway, chapter 12. Beloved, do not revenge yourselves, but give place to the wrath, for it has been written, vengeance is mine, I shall repay, says Yahweh. He is just. He deals with you in justice, but out of love, not because he hates you, but because he wants you to change. He wants me to change. He wanted me to change. And I see that. I get it. So, yeah, I'm grateful for everybody that watches this hour and 15 minute making a liar out of myself for my last video. So, and I legitimately mean it. Each and every one of you. I'm not here for shares. I'm not here for likes. I'm not here for any of that. If you find it fruitful, amazing. It wasn't me, and that's not the false humility that is like standard. Like, oh, I don't want to glorify myself. Don't want to look like I'm glorifying myself, because that's like a inverse, weird judo type way of being humble, but not. Like, I mean that. I did not want to be here to do this. So I can't sit here and pretend to be like be any kind of way about it. So yeah. God bless you all. Thank you for everything.